Welcome back. So what we have so far is in the previous video, we had implemented two different types of reloading animations, not animations, but reloading techniques, right? So if I'm firing and if I hit reload, if I hit R to reload, and whatever bullets I have fired, I get them exact of those numbers, I get them back from the max ammo stash. Okay. So we already tested that, it works fine. So the next thing we have to do is we have to give it a graphical representation for the reload. So right now it reloads fine, but I don't know whether it's reloading until I look at the bottom corner when the numbers change. So I need to have a reload animation like in all first-person shooter games. So when you hit R, then he does that thing. He uncocks a gun, he pulls the magazine out, throws it away, puts a new magazine inside. So that whole animation, we have to set that up right now. So I'm gonna hit escape, and that animation is already existing inside your assets folder. If you have downloaded the whole character along with the animations, so inside the animations, inside character, we had set it up here. And if you look for reloading, and this is it, reloading in place. So he does that and he reloads it, cocks the gun, and keeps it ready for firing it again. So this is what we're going to be using, and let's get started. Okay, so if I'm opening, let me open the reloading in place animation again. It looks fine from a distance, but as you zoom in a little closer, you can see that now the guy is placing his hand a little above the gun, his left hand. Right, so that's because this gun was not a rig that was made along with the character itself. This gun is separate while the character rig is separate, and that's the reason we also had to play around with the scale of the socket and everything else. So but we'll fix that later. But for now, this is going to be good for us because at the moment it transitions to a different animation. Hopefully even this hand that's going above the gun will not be all that noticeable. Okay, so anyways, so I'm gonna close that, and I'll ignore that for now. Let's go into the blueprints, go into the character blueprint, no, the animation blueprint of the soldier. So I'll double click on this, and I'll go over to my, let's say, event graph, not event graph, but if I go over to my anim graph out here, and let's go to, let's double click on walk run and click on this anim graph, or double click on walk run again. So I just want to be here so that I can modify these little different states out here. All right, so right now it says you have the anim graph and you have the walk run. So this is anim graph right now. And of course, if I double click on this, no, not double click on this, but if I double click on walk run, so this is where it'll get me. And this is the particular state that we are in. That is the anim graph for walk and run. This is, let's see, if I double click on idle and this comes here, and if I click on anim graph, again, I go back to walk and run, and if I look at all of this here, so this is the walk and run state. So if I want to go back to my, the animation, and if I go over to the mesh, and that's the blend space, I leave the blend space alone. I go over here, I close that, and out here, if I come over to the blueprint, and this is what I see. Okay, so of course you can also look at the state machines from here. So I can double click on the walk run blend space. So these are all the different state machines out here and the blend spaces. So I clicked on the walk run state machine, and from idle I'm going to pull out another branch. I'm going to pull out another branch and branch it out to a different place where it'll say reloading. Okay, so I'm going to pull out wire from here. I'm going to create a new state. I'm going to call this reload. Okay, the new state is going to be reload, and of course I'll center this out somewhere here, and I'll also connect this to walk and run to reload, and then I'll have to bring them back to the states that they came from. So idle to reload, and then back to idle, or while he's running or walking and he's reloading, then I'm going to connect this back to walk and run. So now that we have the state set up, we have the state set up, which will take us from idle to reload and then walk in and back to idle, or from walk and run to reload and back to walk and run. Now, we will need this later on for the crouching and the sprinting, because the player can also, not the sprinting maybe, not sure about that yet, but for crouching, definitely, if I'm crouching and if I want to reload, I should be able to reload, but we will not handle that right now. We'll handle the most basic reload for the most basic scenarios for the idle and the walk and run, and then we'll switch on to crouching, and then maybe if I want to reload while I'm sprinting, then I'll do that out here. Okay, so this is good for now. The reload animation that sits between idle and walk and run and switches back and forth between these two states is good enough for now. Okay, so now once we have the state, let's double click that state and enter here. Now this needs an animation to be plugged into the result so that the final animation pose can be the reloading. Now you can either search for the reloading out here in the asset browser, or you can simply look for it in alphabetic. They're arranged in an alphabetic manner, so you can look for it in reloading in place. It's right after jump up, and drag and drop it here and simply connect that to the result. Okay, and once you compile it, it's gonna show you, it's gonna throw a bunch of warnings. That's because it has no idea when should it enter the reloading state. So all of these will start disappearing because this is idle to reload and walk, and then reload to idle, and then walk run to reload, and reload to walk run, and it has no idea when to enter, and because we haven't set the transitional rules out here. So next is we're going to set that up, but before we do that, we're going to need variables to communicate between the states and the character itself. Okay, so now let's go over to our player, and if you haven't renamed it, then it's probably third-person character, and look for your reload animation, or the reload function, not the animation. So there it is. So we are using this right now. Of course, you can also switch back to the older method or the first method. So I'm going to stick to this. It's okay. I'm fine with that. So let me double click on that, and this will take me over to the weapon base. So what we need to do here is, after all this logic is played out, I'll have to turn on a Boolean variable inside the player, which will say, like we have, if I can look for my weapons, I guess, is firing. So you have is firing and so on, all of these different variables. So like is firing, I'm also going to need another variable called is reloading, which I will then, if I go back to which I'll then set to true, and which will then play the animation. All right, and so if I go back here, I'll be duplicating this variable, and I'll call this is reloading. Okay, that's a Boolean variable. That's good. And compile, and I think I'll keep this open. I'll close this instead. I'll just keep the animation blueprint open. Right, so once we have this is reloading variable, so now we just have to set it on and off from different places, which will in turn signal the animation blueprint to play the animation. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go back to our weapon base, and out here, so you have you have the true, you have two different places where we are setting the max ammo and everything. So this is where one condition ends, and this is where another condition ends. So to 1 and 2, so 2 endpoints, and we're going to need to do the same thing. So what I'll do is I'll pull out a wire long enough which can connect both of these. So I'll just say cast to player, right? So that would be this thing. Okay, cast to player, and of course once that's done, I'll just say get player character, right? So once that's done, I think I'll just move this up here so that it's better. And then as player, I will have to look for that particular variable, and the name of the variable is reloading. Okay, so pull out a wire from here and say is reloading, and I'll want to set this. Okay, and line them up and set this to true. As simple as that. Now I'll have to do the same thing for both the endpoints. So maybe I'll just probably bring this a little closer. I don't know, like that. And this guy can then sit here without, intercepting any wires. And this can also connect to this. So now when a reload happens at the end of the logic for this function, this is going to set the reloading Boolean variable to true, which in turn is, okay, I think I'll just hide tab, yeah. Which in turn will let the transitional rules out here in the animation blueprint know that it's ready to reload, okay? So we are actually now ready to set this up with the transitional rules, all right? So now let's go back to our animation blueprint. Okay,